And we're live. We are live finally. Oh my goodness.
That's amazing. It's a miracle.
It's a miracle. For some reason out there in the internet live stream world, we were not having any action for an hour and a half.
Yes. Put your hands on the radio and send me $5.
That's right.
And I'll make it work for you.
Right. So we got a great story tonight. You know, we've got Daniel Boone and his neighbors we're going to talk about. If you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about what this book is about, I'm going to check and make sure we're actually streaming.
All righty. My name is Bryan Broderick and my wife, Barbara. We put together a book that my great-grandfather had written around 1860. And he worked on it all the way up until his death in 1940. He tried to get it published. He was a publisher himself. He had published a book, several books, his most notable one being Pioneer Families of Missouri, that went out around 1880. Anyway, he filed bankruptcy in his later years, about 1890. And I think basically people felt he was unreliable and would not publish his work. So it languished until his death in a box. And that box went to my grandmother. And then when she died, it went to my father. When he died, it went to my sister. And my sister passed away 5 years ago, and we found it in her basement. And of course, I'm named for William S. Bryan. That's where my first name comes from.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, I'm looking at the box, and it's typical old dead fella's collection of tax records, old titles, letters. But at the very bottom was a large stack of paper, very old, yellowed, typewritten for the most part, which was rather amazing, all bundled together with string. And on the top page, it said, Daniel Boone and his neighbors. Now, I had known that William S. Bryan was considered one of the top authorities on Daniel Boone in his day. And I'd seen several letters and several articles he had written. Many of these stories I had heard from my aunts, my uncles, two aunts in particular that lived into their hundreds, would tell me these stories. But I never knew they were actually written down. And imagine my surprise when I found them.
Absolutely. And I'm going to sum that up just to make sure we've got it and understand it. And by the way, we are going out live. Folks,
I can see the folks making notes.
You're on Facebook and on YouTube. Make sure you comment. Make sure you let us know where you're watching from. Ask Mr. Broderick questions about the book as we go through here. We'd love to see that. We've got a few comments that are coming in now. Let us know where you're watching from and engage yourself. That's the advantage of being live. So let me understand this. So your great-great-grandfather lived with Daniel and Rebecca Boone for a short time. We're going to talk about that. As he aged, he tells his son these stories that he heard as a boy from Daniel Boone and neighbors and those living around there. And his son, when he got up in age a little bit, he started to write these stories down over time. He writes a manuscript, and then it ends up in the basement for 100 years, passed around a few times, but eventually you found it and published it. So these are like, what is that, third-hand accounts?
Yeah.
Or maybe
well, it's actually second-hand account.
Yeah, second-hand accounts.
Passed through 3 generations.
Absolutely. I mean, this is incredible. I'm really excited about this. You and I have chatted about this multiple times. I've got the set of the book right here. You can see the book right there behind him on there. But
if I only knew which way to turn.
Yeah, you go. And if you forget, I mean, we're gonna mention this a couple times throughout this. Where do they get this book? This is fresh, hot off the press.
Yes.
I think you sent me the first one, right? The very first.
I did. The very first copy. Doesn't it say number 1 on it? It says 00001.
Yeah.
The same year I was born.
That's right. Yeah, man. So looks like Joe.
You can get it from Amazon.com. Amazon, of course. Right now, they're taking pre-orders. Once they get enough orders, then they send the books out. I do have books here at home, and I sell them on eBay. You can go to eBay and search for Daniel Boone and his neighbors, and my little eBay ad will come up. And if you order on eBay, I will sign it, autograph it for you. And if you'd like me to personalize it to you, I'm more than happy to. There you go. See, it's all in my scribble. No, nobody can read it, but
that's got to be your wife's handwriting right there, though. Yeah,
guilty as charged.
That's right. Absolutely.
But yeah, if you do that on eBay, and it's amazing how many people are related to Daniel Boone. Well, he had 10 children and raised 8 others.
Yeah.
So that's 18 people that he raised. And of course, the ones that he raised were relatives because their parents were killed and they were orphaned. So when somebody tells me they're related to Daniel Boone, I never doubt it. Oddly enough, I moved 800 miles north to a little place in Michigan called Petwater. And my wife and I bought a couple of acres. And
Michigan.
The previous owner
you're
was a fellow named James Boone, a direct descendant of Daniel Boone. What are the odds? I'm going to Vegas. See ya.
What is your connection to Daniel Boone?
My great grandfather. Well, my great grandfather was Rebecca Boone's brother. Rebecca Boone's father's brother. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So
cousin's husband.
Cousin 18th times removed. And twice cousins, because Rebecca Bryan's brother married Daniel Boone's sister.
Right.
So it's twice that the Boones and the Bryans intermarried, quite a bit, and the Callaways. They all came from Kentucky to Missouri, and they were large families. 10 people or more in some of the families. So it wasn't that they were second generation remarrying. It's just there were a lot of them that could marry and not be close relations.
So your great grandfather lived with Daniel and Rebecca, who were living with his son Nathan at the time.
My great grandfather was Rebecca Bryan's favorite nephew, and he came and bought the farm next door to Daniel and Rebecca. Then his son Elijah is the one that lived with Daniel and Rebecca for 2 years while they treated him for the effects of a snake bite.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Your great grandfather was the great nephew of Daniel and Rebecca. Yeah, I think we got it now, right?
Yeah. Boy, I'm glad I had my shoes off and I could count on my toes so we could get them.
You're your own grandpa,
Yeah.
Down here,
through my aunt.
Right. And don't forget, we got all those pictures that I can show there as we get along here too. So
we can go through those. And I guess if you'd like, let's start with the homestead.
Okay.
Which is the log cabin.
The homestead of the Bryans.
The homestead of the Bryans, yeah. There you
go.
Now the fellow with the vest, that's Dr. J.D. Bryan, the elder brother of William S. Bryan, who is right behind them. And you'll notice on one end, there's a big opening cut into it. Unfortunately, the fellow that owned the place afterwards had cut a large hole in the end so he could store his wagons inside the original homestead.
Oh my God.
If you look real close, there's a boy in the doorway.
Uh-huh.
That's my great uncle Fitzy, and I had the pleasure of knowing him.
Wow.
So their grandmother lived in this house with Jonathan Bryan, and I think I have a picture. Yeah, there's a drawing with a Native American attacking the front of the cabin.
Yeah, we've got that here coming up.
Up, and there it is. 4,
There we
3,
go. Right there we go.
1.5. There we go. That's Grandma Mary Bryan and Jemima, a neighborhood black lady. And 2 Indians had gone and attacked the Riley family and massacred them. So Jonathan Bryan, who lived in that cabin with his sons, went to the scene, and Daniel Boone went to the scene. It was about 14 miles. And while there, the 6 Indians that committed the massacre broke into pairs of 2 to confuse the trail, and 2 of them were headed to Daniel Boone's settlement to kill Daniel Boone and scalp him and bring the scalp back, which would have been very valuable. And we know this because Blackhawk, the Indian chief that was performing the attacks, had documented it when he surrendered. So the Indians attacked. The first Indian attacked the front door, got his hand in with the axe. Mary Bryan pinned his arm, and Jemima grabbed the axe and sunk it in the forehead of the attacker, killing him. And the second Indian attacked the front door where Aunt Mary had a rifle loaded and shot and killed him.
Amazing.
If they hadn't done that and Daniel Boone hadn't already left for the scene of the crime, so to speak, they could have gone to Daniel's farm and killed him.
And that was about 12 miles, I think, away, right, at Nathan's house?
Nathan's house was 1 mile away from this house.
Okay.
Yeah, because they were adjoining farms. Jonathan Bryan, being the favorite nephew, bought the farm next door to Daniel Boone.
This house here?
Yep, that's the Nathan Boone house, also known as the Stone House. The bottom 2 windows on the right is the room that Daniel Boone died in.
Wonderful. And actually, by the way, Family Tree Nuts has a video there. So if you want to look that up on there, we've got a video right there at this house.
Yeah.
And here's the back side of the house.
Yes.
I'll put any videos we talk about, I'll put the link in the description after we get off here, so you can find them real quick. So we've got some old pictures of that house too, don't we?
Yes, I sent some of those to you. That was when the German family owned it around 1895. That's probably about 1890.
Yeah.
It was before the Curley family got it. And you can see that there's a barn off to one side and an addition on the other.
Look at that. That barn's not there anymore, is it?
No, sir.
Here's another angle of that same photo there. And
yes. Mm-hmm.
And you got the
and now you see the barn's gone. That's a picture that was taken around 1903, 1902, approximately about the time when the Curleys got it, and they remodeled it a great deal.
I think that's about the same. That was 1901.
That's 1901, and you can see it's in a state of decay.
Yeah.
So just in 5 years, Curly's made a big difference. This is an interesting picture. This is, if you look at it closely, you can see it's the backside, like the previous picture you'd shown. But we're trying to figure out what in the world are growing in the backyard.
I think that's marijuana.
Probably. I'll be right back. I'm going to go over there and get some rolled up. We looked at it. At first, we thought it was tobacco. But talking to Ken Kemper and a lovely lady that I know, Marjorie Miles, who started all this process with me, they think it might have been, we call them beggar lice, it's some sort of material to make threading with or rope.
Okay.
So they thrashed the stems and took the fibers out of it and used it for whatever purpose they had, but that we're guessing. We don't know. Ken Kemper, probably being the leading authority on Boone, would have a better idea, and I need to touch base with him and see. By the way, Margaret Miles. You met her. You met Margaret Miles at the graveyard, and she manages the property next door, which is the old David Bryan home, which is now called the Boone Memorial Village, owned by Bernardo Brunetti, a wonderful man. And they have they have a bed and breakfast there. They have a wedding location there and it's right next to the gravesite and the Bryan Cemetery.
Sonia says, "As the Callaway family covered in your book?"
Yes, the Callaway family is. The Callaways had a lot to do with the Boones. The manuscript that Daniel Boone wrote with Elijah Bryan, my great-grandfather, Flanders Callaway was married to Jemima, Daniel Boone's daughter.
Which we have a video at her grave as well.
Yes, you do. And I saw that one. During a supposed Indian attack, he went by canoe down the Missouri River with precious items while his family went by land to the Boone village, the Boone fort. And while he was in the Missouri River, turning to go into the Osage River, the canoe was upset and the manuscripts went down the river. So they're known as the lost manuscripts of Daniel Boone.
So Flanders wrote down the stories of Daniel out of his mouth.
No. Flanders didn't write them. He lost them.
Oh, I'm with you. Okay.
Accidentally. But his father was very involved with the Boones, came with the Boones and the Bryans from Kentucky to Missouri. So there was a lot of Callaways that were involved with the Bryans and the Boones.
Flanders was actually, I think, present at the rescue of Jemima when she was with the with the
two. I don't know if they were his daughter. No, they couldn't have been his daughters. Maybe they were cousins. I don't know. I can't. But yeah, the two girls were Callaways.
Yeah, they were rescued. He was a cousin to them. I think he was a second cousin. Maybe I can't remember. I've known it one time.
There's so many.
You know, and that actual moment right there. If you don't already know, I know you know this, but for our viewers, the moment the Jemima Boone and the two Callaway girls are in their canoe. They drift too close to the land there. One of the Indians grabs a hold of them. They kidnap them. They leave little marks and stuff like that. Daniel Boone and others obviously go and save the girls. And that particular episode ends up becoming, they say, the basis of the book, The Last of the Mohicans, kind of thing. So that ties into that too. So,
yeah, amazing what the the Boones and the Bryans and those people had to go through. Good Lord, William Bryan says the men were made of iron, and the women of gold.
Yeah.
And that is the truth. I don't think any of us could survive the way those folks did. And poor Daniel Boone.
And you talked about that. We're going to talk some more about the people in the pictures and stuff, but tell you when you and I talked on the phone, you told me that exact quote, which I love. The men of iron and women of gold. Yeah. Tell that story. Now let's talk a little bit about the book. It's full of stories. Tell the story about the honey. That's my favorite. And let me back up. I haven't read the book yet. I did not read the book on purpose because I wanted to be brand new, just like everybody else on here about this. But you told me the story that's in here about the honey.
Yes. And these are stories that you'd tell about your own family because he is talking about his own family. He knew all of Daniel Boone's neighbors because he grew up with them. Well, they were older people, of course, but he knew all of them and he interviewed all of them. And his father, while living with Daniel Boone and Rebecca, went out to get some honey out of the spring house. Honey was a staple. Plenty of bee trees around. So they would get barrels of honey And one meal a day or a dessert or a snack was made from whole cakes, which is ground corn cooked on the stove or cooked on the fire, and a slab of honey. Boom, sandwich. Tasty, nutritious, and easy to make. Well, Elijah Bryan went up to the spring house, and when he got up there, he discovered that a mother cat had gone into the honey, and the kitten had followed, seeing what was wrong with mother, and they both drowned in the honey. So he goes back down to the house to tell Aunt Rebecca, and Aunt Rebecca says, take the barrel of honey, get it out of that spring house, put it in the creek, and let the bees reprocess it. I don't want anything to do with dead cat in it. Well, about that time, Daniel Boone comes by. What's going on? Well, 2 cats fell in the honey and drowned. He says, so just scrape off the top and it'll be fine. He says, I've been hungry enough to eat a cat one time or two, probably have. So to prove his point, he sticks his fingers in the barrel and takes a big bite of honey. Yeah, there's an essence of cat. Rebecca, of course, says, get that damn barrel out of my spring house. So, end of the day, she went over, barrels in the spring, and the bees reprocessed it. But these are the kind of stories. It makes it real. It makes it, how many times have you sat at the Thanksgiving table and told these kind of stories and giggled just like you are?
Yeah.
These are fun stories. It makes people real.
And Rebecca won. That's what I heard.
Yeah. Mama's always going to win.
You got to keep
Mama
her
ain't happy. Nobody's happy.
Yes, sir. I've learned that a long time ago. So
yeah, after 47 years, I finally dawned on that.
But I like that you said that. I mean, it's cat. I mean, there was cat in the honey barrels. Like you said, this is not. I think when you and I talked before, you said that history is full of names, dates, and locations and events and things like that. Yeah. And to a lot of people, it's daggone boring. Not to me, but to a lot of people, that stuff is boring. In your book, these are stories, like you just said, sitting around the supper table, things.
Yeah, they're funny. I mean, they had a pet bear, and they would teach it to beg for food. And I think it would sit on its behind and spin and clap its front paws and make a sound like woo, woo, woo.
Okay.
Well, the bear finally got to the point where it was getting into everybody's food, and they ran it off. Well, in those days, there were traveling preachers, and they ran this bear off. So here comes the road preacher coming into Missouri, apparently for the first time. And he discovers a bear coming up on the back of his wagon, spinning around going, woo, woo, woo. Scares the bejesus out of him, scares the horses, tears the wagon up.
Oh my gosh.
And of course he goes running into Defiance, saying that this bear, it was possessed. It was spinning around going, woo, woo, woo. Another story
that's amazing. Unbelievable.
Just funny things like that. Just amazing things like that.
Yeah, Melissa says, click thumbs up if you're laughing. Click thumbs up on there. So, and I wanted to mention too, the Liz Callaway Gooch says, hopefully this will be available since she missed out. She just came in. This video is going to be around forever. You can go to YouTube. If you got to go to bed, if you came in late, you can catch this on YouTube anytime. It's going to be on our Family Tree Nuts YouTube site. And just, Google the book there and stuff. So before I forget, though, how do they get to the book again?
They can get it from Amazon. They can pre-order it from Amazon. You can go to eBay and hit search for Daniel Boone and his neighbors, and it'll bring you to my little store on eBay. If you buy it on eBay, I will autograph the book for you. And Miss Callaway, you're probably a cousin. So I will personalize it to you, saying "Hello, cousin."
There you go.
Or whatever you'd like, for that matter.
That's great.
So yeah, we're having fun with this, and it should be.
Yeah, and before we go into more stories, for those that have just joined in, this manuscript was written by your great grandfather.
Correct.
Back up. your great great grandfather lived with Daniel Boone and Rebecca there for a while.
2 years.
He told the stories to his son, who is your great grandfather, who wrote the manuscripts that stayed hidden in a box for over 100 years until you and your wife discovered it and put it into this book right here.
Yes.
That is a daggone story and a half right there.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a treasure that has been hidden in there. This is a secondhand account from words out of Daniel Boone and his neighbor's mouth.
Yes.
It's right in here. This isn't something that I heard. This is secondhand. I love this. So, but
Liz Miles and Ken Camper both say that they're continuing to make these discoveries all the time. People are finding documents. Maggie Miles happened to find some documents of Daniel Boone's up on a shelf at the Nathan Boone home with his signature on it.
Wow.
You knew how long they were there. And for God's sakes, I don't know what kept the mice from eating them up.
Right, sure.
Or moths, or one thing, these things get eaten up. How in the world that got there for her to find is just amazing.
Yeah, let's talk about your great grandfather. I put his picture up here, William S. Bryan. That's your great grandfather.
Yep.
And I see the resemblance.
The big nose, because air is free.
That's right. Okay. I was talking about the hairdo. I was thinking there,
Yeah, that's the same color, isn't it? Yeah. Just about as thin.
So he was an author, a public. This is the fellow that actually put this to writing. Tell us all about him, because this was just no normal fella, is it?
No, William was, he did researches for encyclopedias. He owned his own publishing company that had 5 different printing presses throughout the country, all the way across the United States. He sold 15 million copies out of his company. 6 million copies he had written. He had also written the book Pioneer Families of Missouri, which even today is referenced by researchers, but especially genealogists. He and a fellow named Rose put this book together. Rose rode on a horse and stayed at all the little farmhouses and caves or whatever habitat people had. And while there, would ask who the people were, where they came from, who the children's names were, and when they were born, and when anybody significant had died in their family. And he wrote it all down, took it to William S. Bryan, who put it in the book, Pioneer Families of Missouri, and wrote the stories of those families. It became extremely popular, selling over 5 million copies in 1890. Think of it. 5 million people could read in the United States in 1890. I mean, how many people were in the United States in 1890?
I could look it up real fast if you'd like.
Yeah, it's just amazing to sell that many books. For a while, the book in 1920 sold for $500. It was out of print, and these genealogists were trying to get it so they could make the connections of the people in Missouri, and of course, follow the families down. Course, he has some stories about Boone. Of course, Daniel Boone is probably fairly famous, but there's no museum for Daniel Boone. There's the Thomas Jefferson Museum, so you can go there and you can see it. The only place you can go and see a collection of books would be the Nathan Boone home, but there's no real museum honoring the man. And I mean, he was a great adventurer. He opened up the West. Nobody would take the Spanish up on their offer to go into Missouri until Daniel Boone came along. And the lieutenant governor in St. Louis made him the commandant and gave him 840 acres to use as he felt necessary. And also put him in charge of the militia.
He didn't hold on to the makers very long, did he?
No, the 840 acres he got in Missouri, he sold to pay off his debts. Kentucky was not good to Daniel Boone.
Or his brother Squire, or Simon
There's-
Kenton,
yep,
or
yep.
James Herod, or Benjamin Logan. We can go on and on with that.
Well, we got a long list, and it was taxation. Um, it was filing deeds. I mean, they got vast acres of land, and all these little counties sprung up, and they might have land that covered 4 or 5 counties, and each one of them wanted them to do deeds and, of course, collect taxes, and it became too expensive for them to own it. So, in Boone's case, he did sell one. I'm not positive on this, but I think one lot was 1,000 acres, and then another lot of land was 2,000 acres. So he had some money when he came to Missouri, but he could have had a lot more had he not had to pay taxes. And then there was all sorts of legal issues over surveys and land claims. So he was constantly being sued.
Constantly, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are some other stories that are in the book here? I think is there a story about a judgment tree or?
Yeah, well, not so much the judgment tree, but Daniel Boone was appointed the judge in the area, and he would judge everything, not murders, but everything down. So any theft and so forth. And there's some funny stories about that. But he did have a judgment tree with a big old elm tree that he sat at the base of, and everybody would come with their complaints, and he'd make a judgment. Yeah, there's old William S. Bryan with his derby standing in front of the judgment tree.
I see it there. I didn't even see the fellow standing in front of the tree.
Yeah, that's W.S., the one that wrote the book. And
so, where is this tree located in relation to the house?
Well, the house is no longer there.
Okay.
The river.
The Bryan house that was was very close to Nathan Boone's.
Yeah, it was very close to Nathan's, but the one judgment tree they have at Nathan's. There are some stories that the real judgment tree was at the Daniel Boone cabin.
Okay.
So that being supposedly the original judgment tree, per William S. Bryan. Remember, there wasn't Google, there wasn't libraries, so some of the information is probably incorrect. But as far as my great-grandfather was concerned, he felt that was the judgment tree.
Okay.
The form of punishment that Daniel would give out was lashes, and the sheriff or someone else would do the lashes because Daniel just didn't have it in him. He detested it. And many times when the sentence was carried out and the welts on the body needed treatment, Daniel would take them into his house, treat the wounds, and then Rebecca would feed them. So He was an extremely kind-hearted man. And considering all the things that man went through, one of his quotes is that his footprints were covered in blood because all the family members he had not only lost, but actually witnessed their deaths. His brother, his son, just awful things that poor man went through, and how he could be such a kind and gentle soul after that just amazes me. I don't think I could be that person.
Right. They had to, pass the judgment.
Oh, yeah.
So on a lighter note, let's lighten it up a little bit. What are tell us some other stories in the book here. What's your favorite story? And we don't want to ruin it too, because you got to read the book.
Yeah, I mean, really my favorite stories are about Wilsey. Wilsey was a slave. He was a slave of my great-great-grandfather's. His father had given him Wilsey because they had grown up together and they had such a close attachment. So Wilsey and Elijah Bryan worked side by side. He lived in the house with them. The houses at the time, the book does describe how people lived, how people ate, how people cooked, how people got salt.
Yeah, the details that we pass up, and regular history stories, right?
Yeah, right. They didn't have iron pots and pans. They would take a piece of bark and put hot rocks in it and make soup, if that was the meal. And then you'd eat out of this bark bowl with splints of wood or your fingers or whatever you could somehow get it to your mouth. Anyway, getting back to Wilsey, Wilsey followed the two Indians that went to that cabin where the two Indians were killed. He tracked them and was there immediately after they were dispatched. Then following that, the grandchildren of Mary Bryan and Jonathan Bryan, William S. Bryan's sister, at the age of 3 became lost. And it was in the winter, and she was lost for 3 nights and 3 days in the woods. And so all the pioneers, everybody came to try to find the child. And it was Wilsey that found her and saved her life. Yeah. So he was considered a local hero, and everybody loved Wilsey. Thought that he killed a wolf with his bare hands, and he wore that skin with large brass buttons.
I would too.
Yeah, and everybody that ever saw Wilsey, if they didn't know the story, they were told the story with Wilsey present. He was a highly respected man.
So he was part of the family, too.
He was. It came, unfortunately, Elijah went bankrupt. He was they didn't have bankruptcy in those days. Your sheriff came and auctioned your property off to satisfy the debt. And since Wilsey was a slave, he would have been considered part of that property. And Elijah was told that he needed to sell Wilsey or he would be sold on the auction block. And he said he'd rather sell his brother than to sell Wilsey.
I'm glad you said that because, first of all, number one, we talk about this several times on our shows that we do. Slavery was no good. Slavery,
no, absolutely. And it still continues today.
But slavery is not exactly what we were taught in school that slavery was. And once again, it's bad. I'm saying it again. It's bad.
One human should never own another.
Absolutely. But this story that you're telling us, the guy would rather sell his own brother than sell Wilsey,
Right.
I mean, that's a great example of the relationship.
They were raised together as children.
I mean, how can you not? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you've ever played sports with anybody, the environment that is right there, or in the military with another, fellow from another background or something like that. So people are people, and history was not what a lot of people think it was. And once again, slavery, no good. Don't put words in my mouth.
Slavery, and there were abuses. I will not deny that there were, and probably quite a few of abuses. And, Daniel Boone did not like slavery, although he owned 8 slaves at one time. But the general feeling was that if they just gave them their freedom, what would they do? How would they live on their own?
Yeah.
So they didn't think it was fair to just release them to be on their own because they were afraid, quite frankly, they'd starve to death.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
It was wrong. Absolutely.
Another show, another topic, another thing.
That all day. The people that know more about it than I do.
Yeah, definitely. Slavery is no good. We're not saying that at all. I said it 7 times now here, but it's not.
Unfortunately, Wilsey was sold. He had to be sold, or he would have been gone on the auction block. But he was sold to a person of his choice. Nice. There was a root doctor that lived in Washington, Missouri, across the river, and he would come and do roots around there, and he needed somebody to drive the wagon and maintain the wagon and help him do some medical procedure, one kind or another. And Wilsey begged to be sold to this doctor, which he was.
Great.
Fast forward 15 years, My great aunt falls and breaks her arm. Guess who sets it? Wilsey.
How about that?
Yeah. So I heard stories about him from people of color in Gray Summit, Missouri, where he would come and doctor everybody. There's a large Black community in Gray Summit, Missouri, which are all descendants of the slaves that were there. Most of them are named Moore, and they're agricultural families. They farm, and some have moved elsewhere, but a great deal of them stayed there and made a life, and they live there today.
Yeah. That's a great story. It really is. And those are stories that are covered in the book. So, well, Lindy asked, are you a great grandson of Daniel Boone?
No, I'm not. I'm a descendant. I'm a direct descendant of the Bryans. So I'm more from the Rebecca Bryan side.
Okay, so let's talk about the Bryans for just a second. Who the heck are the Bryans? Bryans, if you're from Kentucky, you've heard about, Bryan Station.
Yes.
We back up. Rebecca Bryan is the wife of Daniel Boone. Right. She had 3 brothers. I'm sure she had more, but she had 3 brothers that settled just outside of modern day Lexington that started Bryan Station. Bryan Station was invaded by the Native Americans, and right before the very big battle of Blue Licks. Those are your people, kind of thing. So then large family groups moved, intermarried, and migrated with each other, as did your family that moved into Missouri when they moved there in 1799 in the Femme-Osage Valley there. It wasn't just Daniel Boone moving there. It was the entire, Bryan family, a bunch of Daniel's
and the Callaways and the Zumwalts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of families that went to move with them.
Right, moved over there with them. So you're an actual direct descendant of the Bryans, which was cousins. Do you know exactly if somebody says, how are you related to Daniel Boone, what do you tell them?
A long story.
Well, your first name's Bryan, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, my 3rd great grandfather, his father was Rebecca Bryan's uncle.
Got it.
Okay.
So you were cousins to Daniel's wife.
Correct.
Do you know how many removed and all that stuff? We'll have to talk about that.
Oh, I can't do the math. I'd have to take my shoes off.
I could do it in 2 seconds, but we'll move forward. What's another great story in the book?
Oh, there's so many. There's the story of Fort Zumwalt and the Zumwalt families. Blackhawk spent one winter there.
Wait a minute. Who's Blackhawk? I know who Blackhawk is, but
yeah, Blackhawk was a very famous. He wasn't so much a chief as he was basically a captain in the Indian Wars. He was from just north of St. Louis on the Illinois side. That's where his tribe was from. And the English had basically hired him to get rid of the colonialists.
Right.
And
we're talking what, 1820s, 1830s at this point.
Yes. Well, no, prior to that.
Right.
1805. Even 1799, he was there. And after all it was said and done, Blackhawk and Daniel Boone became friends. They conversed, and Blackhawk stayed with the Zumwalts and talked about the 2 Zumwalt daughters being almost as beautiful as his native women in his tribe. The Zumwalts had a fort there, and it was a place where you could get food and supplies, and they would sell. Bryan writes a story about how they would sell frozen whiskey to the Indians and anybody.
Right?
Yeah. I didn't know if whiskey would freeze, but I guess if it's diluted enough,
it's pretty dabbering cold to do that, right?
Yeah. Not, yours wouldn't freeze.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I'm clueless.
Now in Kentucky, we don't have any whiskey, so
no. It's on a stump in a mason jar.
No, that's in West Virginia.
Oh, okay, all right.
Let's move on.
Boone sold whiskey. Daniel Boone had a bar. Daniel Boone had a supply house. But as far as anybody knows, Daniel Boone never used alcohol. Didn't like
Okay.
it.
That's a
Must
great.
have been from his Quaker background.
Okay.
But he did sell it. And he maintained a living quarters fort general store for a short while. A lot of people didn't know that. A lot of people didn't know he was a politician.
Yeah, oh yeah, he served in the Virginia legislature
Yes,
or
he
House
did.
of Delegates.
Yes, he did.
Three separate terms, maybe.
Yes, and he was close personal friends with Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah,
because they get to know each other.
and he was captured at one time. He was captured by Bannister Tarleton, Lieutenant Colonel Bannister Tarleton. You remember that guy with the blue eyes on the movie The Patriot that everybody hates? That evil guy. He was actually captured for a time. Anyway, the story's not about that.
They're all good stories, and we need to keep repeating them before they're lost. It's unfortunate. Even Thomas Jefferson said that there needed to be a museum. He described a museum without saying museum, but something that wrote down everything that Daniel Boone had done for this country. And unfortunately, today we still don't have that.
Maybe you and I can do that, right? Or
Ken Camper with the Boone Society.
You've mentioned him about 4 times. Can you tell us who Ken Camper is?
Ken is probably the most knowledgeable person on Daniel Boone, the Bryans, the development of Missouri, the Indians, tribes. The man's knowledge is so vast, I can't get my head wrapped around it. And what he is getting to is the truth of the matter. There was a lot of fascination in Daniel Boone, and there's a lot of stories written about Daniel Boone that, quite frankly, are not true. And there's some embellishment in this book that was written by my great-grandfather. We had it put down word for word. But Ken has written papers. He and I were discussing the Missouri Indians, not the Indians that were in Missouri, but there was a tribe called Missouri Indians.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were a powerful group. And they basically controlled everything from the Missouri River north.
Mm-hmm.
Well, interaction with white people, they began to get white people diseases, smallpox, and just killed them by the thousands, to the point where the tribe disbanded and assembled in with other tribes, the Osage and so forth. So this left a vacancy in the state of Missouri that Boone could take advantage of. And Ken wrote a paper on it just the other day because he had known all this. Yeah, and he and I were discussing it, and I guess it just dawned on him, I better write this down. Which he did, and he published it.
And you sent that to me. Great stuff. He's definitely a fellow that.
I mean, it's more detailed than we probably need to go into here, because let's face it, we don't want to bore people to death. But once you get started down this path of learning about Daniel Boone and the Bryans and the Callaways and the Zumwalts and all these other pioneers, you just can't stop. It is addictive.
Now, who are the Zumwalts?
So many things.
Who are the Zumwalts? How are they connected to Daniel?
The Germans followed a lot of the pioneers. Amazingly enough, the Germans are extremely industrious people. And the pioneers would come, they'd plant their fields, and they keep planting corn until the ground could no longer support corn. So the pioneer just get up, move, go get some more land. The Germans would follow, buy the land for pennies on the dollar, and they knew about fertilizer. So they would put manure in the fields and have these wonderful farms and become very profitable and productive. So there's hundreds of German families still to this day on those same farms in Missouri.
And I'm glad you brought that up because, my job, I'm a genealogist. And the people that settled into Eastern Kentucky region, West Virginia, Eastern Tennessee, basically Appalachia, are Scots-Irish and German. Mm-hmm. Scots-Irish and German. Scotch-Irish and German. Over and over and over again. That's a topic for another story. but very, very tied-in people. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, anyway, you asked about some funny stories. Let's go with a funny story.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
And it's about the Bryans, so I can do it because I'm a Bryan.
There you go. And your name's
One
Bryan.
of the area characters that William S. Bryan talks about that was lashed quite often by Daniel Boone, or ordered to be lashed, was one of the Bryans. And he had a distinctive hat that he wore. It was a coonskin cap, but it had a fox's tail attached to it instead of what the original animal had.
Yeah.
So pretty easy to spot that fella. Well, he was pretty bad for stealing hogs, and which, were free range. So he'd find one that he'd like. And
I'm going to tell you, I've done a whole lot of genealogy stories, and stealing hogs is at the root of all the problems.
That horses.
Yeah.
He had kids to feed. What can I say? So he steal a hog.
This is your kin, isn't it?
Oh, that's my kin. Yeah, I mean, we're not very bright. There's light bulbs that are a lot brighter than that. Anyway, he would always get caught because he never took off the hat with the red fox's tail on.
Oh,
yeah, it's constantly getting caught.
What an identifier.
Yeah, what an identifier. And of course, he'd go to the judgment tree, and Daniel would say, "Well, did you do it?" He'd go, "Yep, well, I did it." And then they'd give him his 20 lashes, and Daniel would put some lard on his back, and Rebecca would fix some lunch, and
wow, that
Funny
might even be
stories
worth it, right? Just 20. That might be worth it for Rebecca's lunch.
For a hog, yeah, they'd feed you for a week, yeah.
She's redhead. I saw her on, back in the day on Daniel Boone, right?
Yeah.
I know you watched that show, right? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Old Fess Parker. Couldn't tell him from Davy Crockett. I think that's why so many people think Daniel Boone died at the Alamo.
150 times I've heard that. So
almost a daily occurrence.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because we keep going back to there is no museum for Daniel Boone to point out who he was and to identify who he was.
I never even thought about that. I mean, at the Kentucky History Museum, they do have one of his rifles, and they got the family Bible there.
Yes.
And they've got some great stuff there in Missouri there at Nathan's house of Daniel Boone and stuff like that there. But they do not. Yeah, you're right. They don't have a museum. And if they're going to do it, you know what? They ought to do a Boone museum, vice a Daniel Boone museum, because I don't know if you saw the story that myself and Jameson Cable did last Thursday. We talked about Squire Boone.
Squire Boone.
Daniel's brother. We didn't want to talk about Daniel. We wanted to call him DB, I mean, because here's this guy, Squire, that was with Daniel on almost everything that Daniel's famous for, that he doesn't
he's
get.
He's the redheaded stepchild.
Right. They don't know about Squire. Squire is quite an interesting fella,
and all the bullet holes that guy got in him.
Right.
And still running around. I mean, he was
his brother Samuel that he brought to Boone Station. What about Ned? Edward Boone, that was killed out there.
That's such a sad story about Ned Boone.
Yeah.
And
we've got a video. Check it out.
Oh, okay. But the quick story on that is that Daniel's footsteps were full of blood, is what he said. And here his own brother, he convinced to come to Kentucky, to leave Pennsylvania and come to Kentucky. They are trapping some furs, and they stopped the water to horses. Daniel was not comfortable where they were, but Ned wanted to rest. And Daniel saw a bear and was going to go after the bear into the woods. And he turned and looked back, and a group of Indians attacked and decapitated his brother, thinking it was Daniel.
Yeah.
We were going to take the head back to prove that they had killed Daniel Boone. Imagine witnessing your own brother's torture and decapitation.
Say that one more time.
Imagine witnessing your brother's torture and decapitation.
We talk about that. I talk about this a lot on our channel. We read these things. We say these things in history. We just say it in passing. You know what I'm saying? About this happened and this happened. I would think about your own brother. These are real people, and this was not that long ago.
Your own child. Daniel's son was killed during an Indian confrontation.
James, we got a video there too, by the way. So,
and we should watch that.
Yeah,
but Daniel returned to exhume the body and properly bury it. And they said he broke down. He just absolutely broke down.
His own son.
His own son. Imagine having to dig up your own son. Excuse me while I plug in the computer. And rebury your own son, and then to lose another in another battle, then to witness your brother being decapitated.
He saw it happen too.
He saw it happen. He heard it happen. And how that man remained such a gentle, kind, quiet person.
You want to talk about some PTSD?
No kidding. And I don't ever belittle that.
Our ancestors.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, every living moment.
The men were iron and the women were gold, just like you said earlier.
Yeah.
Like that quote.
Yeah. Amazing. But without losing their mind, I'm sure there were pioneers that lost their minds. And it's amazing to me that Daniel didn't lose his. I know I would have lost mine. I could
absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I know, I've been to Iraq. I've been in war conflicts all over Africa and stuff. And a lot of my guys, a lot of my people have lost their daggone minds. I don't know. We better move on.
Yeah, we better move on.
How do they find your book?
They can find it on Amazon. They can also, if they would like an autographed copy, and I'll personalize it, on my eBay account. Just go to eBay and search for Daniel Boone and his neighbors, and it'll pop right up. And you can order a copy, and it's $25 for the book and $5 for shipping. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability for free shipping like Amazon does. But I sign it and mail it to you, and it averages about $4.55 in postage and 50 cents for the envelope. So I'm not making money on the $5.
When they go to Amazon, it's going to show that it's out of stock. What does that mean? When people see
what that means is that Amazon tries to get several thousand books ordered. And didn't that come from a stump? Saw you taking a drink out of?
Oh, no, that's pure water. If I drank all that,
Yeah, that's what I need to keep my nerve up so I can do
have
these.
a brother-in-law from Jackson County, and if you know anything about Jackson County, let's move on. Amazon
has to get a large order, and then they send that to my printer. And with 1,000 books, the price point is less than 2 books. So they try to gather enough orders, so they call them pre-orders, or they'll put it out of stock until you good folks order enough books from Amazon that they will eventually keep them in inventory and then ship them out the same day. But we're growing and we're getting to that point. It would really help me if you bought it from Amazon, quite frankly, but I'd be delighted if you bought it from eBay and you wanted me to sign one for you. I'd tickle to death. And I want to hear your stories when you order it. Tell me who you are.
Absolutely.
So I can write something nice in your book.
These are literally your cousins, right?
Yes, everybody that's throwing a little message up there. He was my great-great-great-grandfather. So-and-so was my cousin. Elijah Bryan, my third cousin, 5 times removed. Elijah was my great-great-grandfather.
How do they get a hold of you directly? You want to give them your phone number, right?
Sure.
You don't have to give me whatever you want, but
you can go to my website, Daniel Boone and Friends. It's just that his isn't in there. And I've got all sorts of little stories that William S. Bryan wrote that are posted on there, and these photographs that you're seeing. We haven't even covered the graveyard and that story.
We're getting ready to get to that, aren't we? We're getting ready to get to that.
I guess we ought to go to that.
Tracy said, where did the Whiskey Rebellion happen again? Well, that's in Western Pennsylvania with my good buddies, the Scots-Irish, my own people. I could trace my direct lineage straight to those fellas with the Whiskey Rebellion there. Go ahead and buzz me offline. We'll talk about that in great detail. That's another story. Yeah, probably a whole help. I'm trying to get some of these comments here. We've got so many coming in. Richard says, where did Daniel Boone not go? He went to Florida. He went to Tennessee, and we know he was in Alabama.
We don't think he got much further north than Chillicothe. He did advise Lewis and Clark and was a close friend of Clark's.
Yeah.
Lewis and Clark camped out in Jonathan Bryan's front yard, Elijah Bryan's father's front yard. And Daniel would walk there every day and consult them about what laid to the west.
Right before they went on their journey.
Yes, this is a story that's confirmed in the book by William S. Bryan. And
look how everybody's intermeshed.
Yeah,
everybody's intermeshed.
Yeah, yeah. So there's things that that people heard rumors of, but here it is in the book.
I'm going to let you handle that comment.
Oh, well, it was hemp. And our family was Broderick and Bascom wire rope. All the cores to our wire rope was made from hemp. Hemp doesn't have the THC that
exactly
people search for to get that high. That's why Missouri to Missouri Indians. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Mm-hmm. Lynn, you hit the nail on the head. And that's another fun thing about this. Some of the comments that people come up with and their stories, I learn something every day.
It's nonstop about Daniel Boone. I mean, there's a lot of people that think Daniel Boone gets more than he deserves. That he's not worth all of this that we're talking about, because there's so many other people that did. We did a story with Jameson from the Kentucky History Podcast. We talked about, is he a hero or a poser? Is what we talked about, because there's a lot of people that did a lot of amazing things, but the fellow from the, John Filson sat down and interviewed Boone and wrote all of his stories down and things. And had he wrote down the stories of so many other guys, especially Simon Kenton, my personal hero, but there's a lot of people that did a lot more stuff than Daniel Boone did, but Daniel Boone does deserve the things that he did.
The recognition. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that must be my cousin. Daniel Boone was their great. Oh, well.
All right, lost it there.
Hi, Annette. There she is. Yeah. Grandmother's brother. So if he was your uncle and my uncle, then they were cousins. Then we are cousins. Yes, we are. Times removed, but we're cousins.
Yeah, you're going to talk about the cemetery. And before you say that, by the way, we do have videos there at Daniel Boone's grave in Missouri. Wait, I thought he was buried in Kentucky.
No.
I was there yesterday. Literally yesterday, I was at Daniel Boone. Let me tell you right now, if you are anywhere near Frankfort, Kentucky, you need to go see Daniel Boone's grave, because the trees all over the place are dab-burn beautiful. I'm talking, they are phenomenally beautiful. The view from Daniel Boone's grave in Kentucky. But he's buried in Missouri, isn't he?
Yes, that's where he was originally buried, on the David Bryan farm, where you met Margie Miles.
Yeah.
The David Boone farm is owned by a wonderful gentleman, Bernardo Brunetti.
Right there, right?
No, that's the Bryan home.
All right, I'm off there. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I don't have a picture of the David Boone home where the cemetery is,
which is right behind the cemetery. But we do have pictures of the cemetery.
Yes, if you go to Daniel Boone Village, Boone Memorial Village on the Boone Memorial Road, look that up and you'll see the house. David Boone. Originally it was walnut, and they took it down and they rebuilt it as brick, but they used the same footprint and many of the same building materials. And this cemetery is on that property, which is owned by Bernardo. Here is a photograph of Dr. J.D. Bryan and my Uncle Fitzy, my great Uncle Fitzy.
So the little fella is your great uncle.
The little fella. Yeah, he's William S. Bryan Jr. And you'll notice there's two stones, one to the right and one to the left. The story is one of the many stories. But the story is that William S. Bryan believed is that Boone chose to be buried to Rebecca's right. And when he died, they dug the grave and discovered an older grave next to her. So they dug another grave, either at her foot or up at her head. And he was buried there. So fast forward to 1845, he was buried in 1820. Fast forward to 1845, we have another picture of the graveyard with William S. Sr. and Dr. Bryan.
Is that one there?
No, not that one. We should have another. That's in 1945. That's a different. That's Bryan. That's a different cemetery. Maybe I didn't send you that one. But anyway.
Yeah. By the way, this video, if you go to Jemima Boone's grave or Daniel Boone's Missouri grave, you'll be able to see this. I've got several shots of the pan of this area.
Yeah. Anyway, a judge got a writ because he's a group from Frankfurt that was starting a commercial cemetery.
1945.
Right.
1845.
Yeah. And to make the cemetery a commercial success, they were gathering bodies of famous individuals. And the jewel was Daniel Boone and his wife, Rebecca. So they got a fellow named Boone, B-O-O-N, no E on the end, to say that he was a relative. And a judge got a writ together, and a group from Kentucky came out to the Bryan farm. David Bryan was still alive. He was ill, and he told his daughter, go out and show them where Daniel and Rebecca are buried. So she was 12 years old. She walked these gentlemen out to the graveyard and said, I think that's where Grandma and Grandpa are buried. So they proceeded to dig it up. All that was left was the large bones. So whatever anybody wants to say about where Daniel Boone's buried, in Missouri, he's buried because that's where his heart and brain is.
I like that. Say that one more time. You said that in passing, but that's a big deal what you just said.
Yeah. Daniel Boone's in Missouri because that's where his heart and brain is. All Kentucky got was a couple of leg bones, a hip, a jawbone, and a skull.
That's great. I'm a Kentuckian, but Daniel was dab-burn pissed. I'm going to say.
He did not. Kentucky. He did not. He stated that he'd rather put his head on a chopping block than he would to return to Kentucky. He was so mistreated.
All right. Now you heard what Mr. Broderick said there. Kentucky people, let's chime in and what do you think about that?
Well, I'm sure we'll have a lot of ding, 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 ding.
Because Daniel Boone is our favorite son, kind of thing. He's our favorite fella, But
so anyway,
on the chopping block, he was mad at government. See, that's the whole point.
Yeah, he's mad at government.
We could do 17 episodes on this about how our ancestors hated big government. These people that were expansion west, the Scots, Irish, and the Germans that were. Anyway, I'll shut up right now because I'm going to get ready to go on.
76 was essentially against big government.
Right. Let's get back to your book here because we'll get on.
If you want to get a copy of the book, it's available on Amazon or on my little eBay store. Just search for Daniel Boone and his neighbors on eBay, or go to Amazon and put in a pre-order.
Tell us another one of your favorite stories from the book.
Well, I didn't finish with the graveyard. I'd like to continue.
I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
So when Kentucky showed up to exhume the bodies, William S. Bryan said that the coffin of Rebecca's was still intact, yet she had been buried 7 years prior. And the grave that they assumed was Daniel Boone's was very deteriorated and collapsed on itself. So they exhumed the two bodies, put them in boxes, but before burying Daniel Boone, they took several plaster casts of his skull. 6 of them are known to exist. Dr. Davis, a forensic doctor in Kentucky, examined one of those skulls not too long ago. He died from cancer, unfortunately. But while examining it, he noted that the ridges where all the plates in the skull come together were not closed. And he said, this skull is the skull of a 35 to 40-year-old man. Because as you age, these bones, these plates come together, they fuse together and become very smooth. And he showed a skull that was of a man of 85 years old, and it was almost perfectly smooth. Then he turned over the skull and he says, I can't prove if this was Caucasian or African.
Yeah, well, they call it Negroid is what they said. Yeah.
Negroid is what they said at the time. But this doctor used the modern term, African. But he said these two pods at the base of the skull where your neck muscles attach, he says, you'll notice they're extremely large. So this skull came from a man that did extremely heavy labor on a daily basis. So if I had to guess, it's probably African. So that's two of the things.
Yeah, but you got a connection to the Missouri people.
I've got a what?
You got a connection to the Missouri people. The Kentucky people don't say that.
Oh, no, they don't. But
if you listen, I've listened to all, and all of them are 70 plus.
Yeah, yeah.
These fellas are ready to throw down on where Daniel Boone is buried. You know,
just set the walker over to the side and take a swing.
In Kentucky, he's in Missouri. I would love to see these old fellas just put it out.
Just line up. Yeah, just line up. Well, I guess I'm one of them.
You're right. I'm glad you said that because
the Rolla School of Mining brought out a ground penetrating radar, and they located several cavities where bodies are supposedly buried, and there is one above where Rebecca Bryan was.
A grave right on top of her.
Right.
But the little girl said he was supposed to be buried to the side of her.
Yeah. So above her, not on top, above.
Right.
So there is a disturbance there that could possibly be Daniel Boone. Nobody else.
Well, I mean, you got to do DNA test on that, but leave him alone.
There's enough left.
Leave him alone.
Yeah, leave him alone, for God's sakes. Let the poor man rest in peace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what's another story, in your book?
Oh, there's, God, I guess.
It's a pretty, let me click back here.
It's 375 pages.
Yeah, 300. But I want to say in the back here, there's multiple, I don't know if you can see that, there's multiple photos. People like me, we like pictures. I was in the Marines, we like to color. We crayons and stuff
no crayons come with the book, unfortunately.
No
crayons. Ones do not taste like grape.
Are you Navy? You were Navy. Are you
Air Force? We let you guys go in and get the golf courses cleared for us.
It's Air Force, but another show. But I do what I like about the book the most. When you sent this to me, I saw the envelope was large, and I was impressed right off the bat because it has large type. I don't know if you can see that. It is large. It is large type, and I've been tempted to delve deep inside this book. But you and I talked. I said I want to talk about your book like somebody who's never read the book, and I haven't. But 375 pages. No matter how you shake a stick at it, there's a lot of knowledge in there, and I love the fact that it's secondhand knowledge. That is a big deal because what I spit out most of the time is 7th, 8th hand knowledge. This is literally, he heard stories from his father who heard it from Daniel Boone.
Yep.
And
exactly.
Wow.
Well, wrote it with Daniel Boone when he wrote the manuscript.
Absolutely.
While the manuscripts are being written.
Yeah.
Daniel Boone could write. In fact, he wrote quite a few letters and it was fairly prolific, but he still needed a little help assembling it. So Elijah was there to do that.
Which is Elijah's your great grandfather.
Well, my second great grandfather. Yeah, William S. Bryan's father. I like this Air Force brat that likes pastels.
So since you're talking about, your family and stuff like that, this is not something that's in the book. What does this mean to you? What does this mean to your family? I mean, this is a big deal. This is
a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
William S. Bryan was a big deal in our family. He was a world traveler. He was extremely intelligent. He was he started the St. Charles newspaper in 1865. He started several newspapers and was an editor of even more. So he was quite well known worldwide. And again, he wrote several letters back and forth with the Missouri Historical Society because he was considered an authority on Daniel Boone, having been a close relation. He was Daniel Boone died in 1820, and William S. Bryan wasn't born until 1845. So there was 25 years, and of course you probably don't become aware until you're 12, 13. So
sure, of course.
But his older brother was also an authority on Daniel Boone. His older brother did one of the first genealogy studies about the Bryans and traced it all the way back to Bryan Broderick.
Which brother?
J.D. Bryan, his older brother. Yeah.
All right.
Dr. J.D. Bryan. And he spent a tidy sum back in the day, 1860s. Here again, you didn't have familytree.com and so forth.
We connect you, by golly. If you're related, by golly, we'll find it.
We'll find
it. Michael Bush is saying Elijah Bryan is his third cousin 5 times removed.
Hey, cousin.
Me and Michael Bush are going to do a story because Michael Bush is related to everybody in pioneer history. And I'm jealous of Michael Bush. I wish I was Michael Bush because he's related to everybody.
Yeah. If you're related to a Bryan, you're probably related to most all the frontiersmen one way or another.
Yeah,
they were a big family. They were big, 10, 12, 13 children in a family.
Yeah. They didn't have Netflix.
I think what it was is the wives were hard of hearing because the old man would, say, "You want to go to bed or what?" And she'd say, "What?" So.
Can you say that? Can you say that one more time?
I think the pioneer women were hard of hearing because when time to go to bed, the old man would say, "You want to go to bed or what?" And they'd say, "What?" So,
and here we are.
13 children later.
I love it.
What?
I love it. What? I love my great grandmother. So.
Yeah, where's the guy with a drum set and a hi hat when we really need him? Guys, I heard his friend James Boone screaming. Yeah, just imagine the absolute terror that these people. That last comment where you could hear James Bryan screaming. That's just. Good Lord.
I'd love to read your book.
I would love for you to have a copy of that book. And
how does she get hold of it?
She can get it at Amazon.com. Or if you'd like an autographed, personalized book, which I'd love to give you a personalized book, and Lynn, you can go to eBay and search for Daniel Boone and his neighbors, and my little eBay store will come up on it, and I will autograph a book. And I will personalize it for you if you tell me how you'd like it personalized, and we'll get it out in the mail to you. It takes about a week to get it, so allow a week for delivery. Yeah. Completely impressed on how well you know your family lines. Yeah, well, everybody in my family beat it into me from the time I was born.
I reckon you're pioneer royalty, is that they call it.
Yeah, well, I don't know about royalty, but
My people are from the West Virginia Kentucky line, and Hatfields and McCoys, we're connected to all that, but your people right there have connections that go deep. You have deep Appalachian roots, and that's what's cool about Kentucky. People like, what's the deal with Kentucky? I grew up in Ohio. I don't advertise that very much, but Kentucky is a hotbed of genealogy
Oh
because
yeah.
so many people have lived here first. They can trace their ancestors to a generation, the people that lived here from 1775 to about 1810. And then they
Mhm.
moved to Indiana, they moved to Missouri, they moved to Texas, then they went to Oregon, they went to
Yeah.
California, you
It
know,
was a hopping off point, but
absolutely.
all the trails converged. You had to go through Kentucky if you wanted to go west.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
Kentucky is a hotbed of genealogy, and so
Mhm.
many of us have ancestors. It was the first place of the West, So
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing stories.
tell me another story
Tell you another story
from the book, because
from the book.
I know we need to go. I know we need to go, but tell me another story from the book. I know you don't want to ruin it, but
Well,
there's
Billy Cosgrove was the Cosgrove families were followed the Boones and Bryans and settled in Missouri. So that's another name. But Billy Cosgrove was an interesting fellow, and he was always getting in a situation with a panther or a bear or a deer. Well, one time he got a hold of a buck and got it by the antlers and pinned it to a tree and was stuck there in battle with this buck,
wow.
barehanded. No knife. His knife was dropped. So here he is stuck with it. So he's hollering, and here comes Wilsey. Remember Wilsey?
Yeah, but
The
Wilsey, the African American, the
famous,
black fellow.
famous African American that was Elijah Bryan's slave. He comes along and he
Hey, let me
starts laughing.
tell you what, Wilsey needs to be one of them guys that people talk about during Black History Month.
I am trying to find the history of Wilsey.
We need to write a book about Wilsey.
I would.
Not we. I mean, you.
Yeah,
You need
I
to write a book
would
about
if I could only find them. Unfortunately, the history on African Americans, nobody wrote it down. Nobody said where they're buried, but there are tax records, and Franklin County, Missouri, was very good about keeping tax records. Unfortunately, they didn't put the names of the slaves, but I do have the name of the doctor,
Wilsey. Yes.
and this was the only slave that the doctor had. So the one thing that's wonderful about it is Wilsey did live long enough to get through the Civil War and attain his freedom.
Wow.
So he died a free man.
That's a story right there. There needs to be a movie made about Wilsey.
I would love to make it, but there's just nothing written down about him that I can find. So I've got to dig into these tax records, but how much can you learn from tax records? That being the only document to go by, other than the stories that are in this book that about Wilsey, and what a wonderful man he really was.
What a treasure your book. I'm glad you said that, because that's the thing that I know you don't want to brag about that, but as a genealogist, we got tax records, we got census records, we got freaking probate records, we got all that stuff, that talks about all these different people and their genealogy and stuff like that. But when you get into black or what do you want to call it, African American genealogy, they don't have a lot of records like we have for our own people. But this is a fella that there is some stuff out there, and your book actually. Once again, let me back up. Your book was written starting in about 1860, I think you said, pre-Civil War, and it was stored in a basement for over 100 years before you even
various basements,
and published it. That is powerful stuff that's out there. That is not, your book is not infiltrated with political stuff of today. Your book is somebody that he wrote the stories down, how it was when it was the way it was, and that is powerful. So
Sandy asked about the book when it'll be in stock at Amazon. Unfortunately, they have to get a number of orders before they'll keep it in stock. So, my friends out there, if you would order from Amazon, it would get their inventory numbers up. You will eventually get a book from them if you do order it, but when they get to a certain point of books ordered, then they will inventory it all the time. So thank you for asking about that, Sandy. It's just part of the process you go through. Amazon is we got to get them where they sell enough books that they see it's worthwhile to inventory.
They can get it on eBay.
You can get it on eBay. I'll sign it. I'll personalize it to you. You just go to eBay and search for Daniel Boone and his neighbors, and bang, it'll come up. Or you can go to the website, danielbooneandneighbors.com, and there's a link there also. And there's a couple of little stories written in there that we took out of the book that you can enjoy, and there's pictures and so forth. A lot of fun stuff.
I mean, let me back up again. I mean, I know we've been on here almost an hour and a half now, and folks that are watching this years later are going to wonder, why are we talking so long about this? But I'm going to back up for those that have just joined us. This book right here, this book was written by it's written by your great-grandfather, with stories from your great-great-grandfather who lived. I'm going to say it again. He lived for a time with Daniel Boone and Rebecca, who were his it was his great aunt and uncle.
Great aunt and uncle, yes. Mm-hmm.
He lived with them, and he wrote these. He told his son these stories. And I know you've told your son stories, and I've told my son stories, and he wrote it down. So this is secondhand accounts from real people. And this is not just dates, facts, and locations. This is stories that we would tell to our families. We have a thing at Family Tree Nuts. We call it life interviews. We sit down with your elderly family member, and he or she tells stories about their life when they were kids, and their voice and their name. And their great-great-great-great-grandchildren are going to be able to see these videos.
Yes.
That's one of the things we do at Family Tree Nuts. That's an incredible passion that we have here that I feel like we're doing an amazing work. You've done that here with people that have lived, 200 years ago plus. So yes. That's amazing. And I'm so thankful that you did that.
I found it, and like we discussed earlier, we did not change a single word that William S. Bryan put down.
And the handwriting was difficult, you told me.
Oh my God, it was atrocious.
Yeah, your great-grandfather had
somewhere along the line.
And bright people have messy handwriting because who cares how I wrote it? I'm getting further on here. Yes.
But someone in our family was related to the guy that invented a typewriter, and thank God William S. typed out most of this. So we were able to transcribe it without too many errors. I mean, there are some places where it's scratched out and handwritten notes, and they were really tough to decipher. But I think we got them. And we put it down word for word to the best of our knowledge.
How long did it take you to do this?
3 years. And then another 9 months to get it printed, proofread, ebook.
Almost 4 years.
Yeah, literally 4 years. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to answer this question. You do not have to answer this question. We can move forward if you want to not answer this. How much money do you have involved in this?
A little over 40,000.
Of your own money?
Yes. It's that important to make it a permanent document that's available to future generations.
$40,000 of your personal money you've invested into this book project.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
It's important that my children have this, and their children, and other generations of people.
I'm glad you said that. We didn't script this.
It's valueless. I mean, how can you put a price on it? They don't teach it in school anymore, for crying out loud. Do they even have a class called history anymore in grade school or high school? Where are people going to learn this? From Fess Parker?
And this is Fess Parker. A lot of people watching today don't know who Fess Parker is, but
only old guys like me.
Wait, I've seen every episode. Kind of thing. So Daniel Boone was the man.
Of I met the man in his vineyard.
You did.
He was truly a very nice man. Unfortunately, he was dying from prostate cancer at the time. And
So
even racked with pain with cancer, he was kind enough to come out and talk to us.
you're not trying to get rich.
I'll never get rich on a book. Cut it out.
Absolutely not. You're not trying to get rich. Like in my opinion, and I'm one of those guys. In my opinion, this is one of the most important books in the history of the United States. I mean, this is.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that.
You know, it really is, because this is not a story about history. I can Google and look at Wikipedia and learn about Daniel Boone, but I can't learn about the cats that fell in the honey, you know, on Wikipedia.
Or the bear that spun on his behind and went woo woo woo.
Woo woo woo! I'll remember that the rest of my life. And you know what? I'm going to tell my grandkids that, and if I'm lucky, I'll tell my great grandkids that story because I got it in your book.
Yes, and there's stories that people traded with each other. That told, those funny things that you do as you go through life, and somebody remembers it and tells it at the next Thanksgiving dinner. Then shares it, and everybody has a good laugh. And there's stories that are factual also, but it's a romance realism of pioneer life. So there's romance in it.
Say that one more time.
It's the romance and realism of the pioneer life.
Say that one more time, please.
One more time. Romance and realism of the pioneer life.
I like that, because history is not dabber boring.
No, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. If it's boring, then find a different teacher.
Yes, you daggone right. One of the most influential people in my life was my American history teacher. And I can tell you about the state history teacher that I had, that I could go on, and they put an amazing influence on my life. And it's books like this. This is real history, guys.
Yeah. I can still remember Mr. Tanzer from 7th grade.
Say again?
I can still remember Mr. Tanzer from my 7th grade class. I mean,
Mr. Tanzer,
what year was that? I remember the 7th grade teacher.
What year was that?
He about 18.
You don't have to answer that.
It was in the 60s. But he planted those seeds, and my father planted those seeds, and my grandmother and cousin Fitzy, or William S. Bryan Jr., who lived into his 90s. So I got to enjoy him and enjoy the stories he told me about his father, William S. Bryan. And like I'd mentioned before, I had 2 aunts that lived into their hundreds that told me these stories. So it was naturally instilled into me to enjoy history, but they were stories about so-and-so did this, and this is how he did it. It made it a person, not a page in a book with, on this date, that time, this place.
I love it. Yeah. They made him a person. They were real, breathing human beings that had these experiences and these stories. These were the people that were your ancestors. These were the people that you came from.
Yes.
Their DNA is in your body right now. And you were able to honor them by putting this book out there.
Well, I hope so. I really do hope so. I hope somebody 100 years from now sees it and understands what had gone on 400, 500 years before them, and how we got here and how this country was made, if they can keep from tearing down the statues and ruining these books and this history.
Tell us about that real fast. And I know we need to go. And I don't care if we talk all night, because you and I could, you and I
could talk all night.
We're kind of kindred spirits, kind of thing. We really are. But let me ask you this: when you found that manuscript, and I know it was passed down from your father to your sister to on down the line. When you saw that, what did you think? You have invested a tremendous amount of money of your personal estate into this. What did you think?
Well, First of all, it was the love of family. My
Amen.
aunts in their hundreds, my grandmother, Uncle Fitzy, my father. They told me this history. They told me these stories out of this book that were told to them by William S. Bryan. And I didn't know the book existed. And I don't think they knew the book existed. But they were articles and so forth that were told to them firsthand that they felt important to repeat to me. And this is truly the best way I can honor them, honor my father, my grandmother, and my aunts, and put their memories. Maybe you don't know their names, but their memories will be here forever with this book.
I like that.
Well, that's what you do. You do the same thing with your genealogy studies and bringing these stories to the surface. It's the love of country and people and how we got here. Whether you're related to them or not, you once you study them, you feel extremely close to them.
You're exactly right. And you see what Tracy says there, Tracy Clevenger, and he's one of your Michigan friends there.
Oh, yeah. What part of Michigan's Tracy from?
Any place in Michigan's not good, but I love Ohio State and anybody who plays Michigan. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. Only because you tried to steal the bottom half of the state from us.
That's a real war, by the way. You and I should talk about that another time. It's a real thing.
Actual war fought off over it.
But Tracy said, I heard someone say that it means something different when you know your DNA was there. So my job is I find the ancestors of people that they didn't know existed.
Oh
build the family trees.
Yeah, what a wonderful thing to give to somebody.
And we have a team here at Family Tree Nuts that does that. It's a calling and a passion. It really is. Like when I find out about your ancestors, I'm just as excited as if they were my own. But when you find out that your ancestors were physically there, they had a part in this. Yeah, that history isn't history anymore. Yeah. Your DNA was there.
Yeah.
And Mr. Broderick, your DNA was there.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And my forebears were very, very, it was very important to them to pass it on to me. And I had forgotten most of these stories, most of the facts that went with them. And what a treasure. I mean, it's like going back and being 8 years old again. I mean, it really makes me feel young to read these stories in these books. And I still pick it up and read the stories and remember, the old folks telling me all these stories and who they knew, where they came from, what they did, how it felt, how it tasted, how it smelled.
Mr. Broderick, this was not long ago.
No, not really in the history of man, no.
I have been to 40 countries. I've been all over this world. I've been to places, I've been in churches that were 800 years old. You know what I'm saying? I've been in monasteries, in the Far East that were 1,000 years old. This was not long ago. We're talking about stories that were literally, Daniel Boone died 201 years ago. We're talking about, 201 years ago, we're talking about, what is that? He's your third, fourth great uncle.
Fourth or fifth.
Yeah. Fifth. This is not that far back.
No.
People are surprised to realize that I'm 45 and I know people that knew Civil War veterans.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know Civil War veterans, but I knew people that did.
Yeah. Well, my two aunts, one lived to be 101, the other one lived to be 103. They both remember their father burying a Union soldier in the front yard of the house that I owned.
Wow.
That they were Southerners, they were Confederates. Half the family was split up. But
from Missouri.
Yeah, from Missouri. They remember their father and mother caring for a Union soldier that was critically wounded, and he died. And they pointed out where the grave was I had bought back one of the family farms in Gray Summit, Missouri, and brought the house back to its beginnings. It's like it was when it was a wedding gift in 1904. So I brought it back to what it was in 1904.
You have a gift. You have the gift.
No, it just you try to preserve the past so the future generations can learn.
And it's a gift because how many of your brothers, your siblings, how many of your cousins do the same thing?
And my brother and sister didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Right. It's a gift. It really is. You see what Carolyn says? We
It's
put the flesh.
It's a passion. It's a passion more than it's a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same. It's a passion and a gift. You know, you put the flesh on their bones and they live again, Carolyn says.
Yeah, well, this is true. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. You know, I might get that tattoo right there, you know, kind of thing. You know, but
I got some room. Let's see.
Yeah. My stuff is Marine Corps.
Showing you my neck. Yeah, you can see I'm Irish.
Oh yeah, brother. The Bryans, it probably was over.
Bryans and the Brodericks. Yeah.
And the Brodericks.
I'm 100% Mick.
So yeah. I always say I'm white trash, but that means Irish, right? But we don't
That's
care, right?
Yeah. They wouldn't even bury us in their cemeteries. We had to go get thrown in a ditch.
Absolutely. And we're here to discover them. So this book, I'm gonna sum it up again. This book was written by your great grandfather. He heard
Correct.
stories from his father, your great great grandfather, who lived personally with Daniel Boone and Rebecca Bryan Boone, who your name is Bryan.
Yes.
He lived with them. They wrote the stories. Your great grandfather did. It sat in a manuscript for 100 years plus. Mm-hmm. You discovered it and you put it out there for us, and it's there. We can all read it. We can all learn about it. Secondhand stories from Daniel Boone himself and Rebecca and their neighbors.
Yes. Yeah. And it's been a fantastic journey. And the people I've met along the way, I keep bringing up Margie Miles and Ken Kemper and Bernardo Bernetti. They believed in me when I began this travel, or whatever you want to call it. And it's people like them that really made it where I wanted to go forward. And quite frankly, for 6 months, I think we've only taken in maybe $400 or $500 on these books.
Who cares about the money? Who cares about
the money? It's more important that future generations learn about this stuff. You know, and
right.
I got to tell you one quick story. When it was Daniel Boone's 201st anniversary of his death, and I was at the Boone home, the people there were gracious enough to let me have a booth at the Nathan Boone home. And everyone, I mean, there were kids all over the place. It was
Nathan Boone is a son. He's a son of
his youngest son. Yeah. And that's the house he died in. So they call it the Boone home. It's kind of correct. It's not Daniel Boone's home. It's Nathan's. Anyway, these young children would come up and they were all about Daniel Boone, and they would listen to the stories I would tell them. And they were glued to me, and they were fascinated, but it was only 1 out of 50. The other kids were bouncing balls off of stuff or looking at their iPhone. Well, any child that came up to me and expressed an interest, I gave them a book. It's yours to have. And that's what's important, is that these kids, maybe I make an impression on them and they read this book and they take it forward to the next generation.
Right. Absolutely.
That's what it's about. And unfortunately, this environment we're in is trying to destroy history. And if they do, we're just doomed to make the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
We learn from our past. Both
do.
Great things and big mistakes.
What an amazing story that is. 1 in 50. 1 in 50. I mean, that's 2%. We are the people that are going to preserve these stories.
Right.
What we do at Family Tree Nuts, is spiritual to us.
Oh, yeah.
We're not just trying to make a business and make some money. And and things like that. We're trying to, we literally have a passion. Our team of genealogists, when I talk to genealogists that want to join Family Tree Nuts, we talk about that. This has to be a passion for you. This has to be part of who you are, to bring the stories of these people that have been forgotten to their descendants. And if you remember them, they're never dead.
No, they're never dead. I mean, that's one of the comments I make. You go into St. Charles County, there's, there's this bridge, there's this highway, there's this street, there's this creek, Dardine Creek. Well, what's a Dardine? Well, it was a person.
Right.
And this person settled this area, and this creek was part of it. And they're, by the way, they're buried on that hill up in those woods on that farm. But to people of today, it's a creek named Dardine. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And it's, these things all have meaning, and they were very important people back then to have a creek named after them, or they just owned property on it. But what they did to get there to make that happen is unbelievable. The accomplishment is just fantastic. I mean, these people endured unbelievable trials and tribulations.
Well, what about this guy? Talk about, I think we've been through all the photos that you sent me, except for this fella right here. Who is this fella right here?
I'm blessed with anybody. There we go. That's Nathan and his wife. The only photo of his wife. And Nathan, that's a portrait. That's obviously not a photo. It's Nathan Boone's youngest son. He had quite an accomplishment of his own. I mean, he was an officer in the Army and famous for several battles. He was a surveyor. He discovered several paths and trails for people to follow. So he was quite accomplished in his own way. That's Nathan Boone, who owned the house or the home where Daniel Boone died, and it's now currently called the Boone Home in Defiance, Missouri, about 3 miles west of Defiance, Missouri, in St. Charles County, Missouri.
Yeah, and that's let me bring this up one more quick time here. That is this house right here.
That house right there, that's the modern day picture.
And
Uncle Daniel died in the bottom right hand corner of that house.
Back up there, yeah, the bottom right hand corner. We've got a great video of that location right there. You can get a zoom up picture of that.
There is a third floor in that house.
Oh, really?
Kind of a ballroom. You're not allowed to go up there. The stairway is too narrow, so they won't let you go up there. But they would have parties up there or gatherings up there. But that's also where Daniel Boone's second coffin was stored. His first coffin was made of walnut, and a gentleman had died and didn't have the money for a coffin, so Daniel gave him his walnut coffin. And another one was made for him out of cherry. And it was stored on the third floor of the Daniel Boone or the Nathan Boone home. And Daniel would play with his grandchildren and his nieces and his nephews. He would go upstairs and hide in the coffin.
Wow.
To surprise them. What a wonderful grandpa, to play with the kids. I mean, it might be a little macabre, but, the kids loved it.
I think they have that on the story right there at the Welcome Center. When you come in, they tell that story about the
do they? Okay. It personalizes Daniel Boone. It makes him a person.
Yes, you're right. He was a real fella, blood, blood DNA. We talk about that in one of our videos, I think. But what's another, and I know we need to go. I'm sorry to keep you so late, but
no, you're not late.
What's another one of your stories that you really like in this book?
Oh God, there's so many. Most of them are about Wilsey. I really do respect, and I wish I could find some way other than this book to honor him.
I wonder if you can find his descendants via DNA. That's coming.
Yeah, somehow Unfortunately, Wilsey did not marry and had no children. So his story ends with his life.
Wow.
Doesn't go on with family, which makes it all the more difficult to find him. But
Yeah.
what a wonderful person. Some of the stories that really are more interesting than that are my favorites is the description of St. Louis when it was a village of 500 and how the houses were built. And the habitations. I mean, people lived in caves along the river.
Yeah, they did.
People lived under sheds. And he describes the various homes and how they were built. Usually they were just poles stuck in the ground and mud packed between the poles. Later on, you put clapboard on the outside. And if you were a well-to-do person, you might whitewash it with some lime and water. But how they made salt,
Yeah, what an important thing that was.
Oh yeah, they have to go find
salt. Look at Melissa. Melissa there has commented, "What's your eBay seller name and where's the book located?"
Oh, you can search on eBay at just put in Daniel Boone and his neighbors when you go to eBay, and it'll bring you right to me. That's a great question. What's my name on eBay? I forgot. I'm an old man. I've had it for years.
You got white hair. We forgive you. So yeah. So you're talking about
Twin Cam 99, if I remember.
Okay, yeah, you can't miss Daniel Boone and his neighbors. You're talking about salt. What's the deal with salt?
Salt. You had to have salt, or you'd starve to death in the winter. I mean, salt. You dried your meat with it. Of course, it was seasoning, but salt was extremely important. It was worth its weight in silver, if not gold, and it was extremely difficult to manufacture. So, a lot of like Boone's Lick is a salt lick, and they'd watch for animals licking the minerals.
Absolutely.
Here usually, and they always search out salt and paw it from the ground, or you look for a brackish pond or creek where a brackish water would come out. So what they would do is they didn't have kettles back when Daniel Boone's time, 1799.
They did, but they were valuable.
Yeah, it was still bad. So what they would do is they would take barks off of trees and shape it in a bowl, put the brackish water in it, get stones as hot as they could, and throw it in the water to evaporate the water until they got the salt.
Isn't that amazing?
Imagine how laborious that was.
Yeah.
And there's several stories in the book that they spend weeks. I mean, they risked their families being destroyed to go out and get salt. They'd leave the women and children alone, and they'd go out and make salt for weeks, only to have it stolen by the Indians when they were returning and have to start the process all over again.
What important. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it could, be a life-ending situation if you didn't have salt. And sugar was William Bryan says that if you visited and you weren't a bowl of sugar was not put out on the table for you to enjoy, that was a rude insult. That meant that you were not to come back.
Look what Peggy said there. She said, "You brought Wilsey alive. Perhaps there is more info through the doctor in which he lived, but
that's what I'm pursuing.
Alive."
Yeah, that's what I'm pursuing is the doctor. He was in
before this book. Nobody knew about Wilsey.
What? Excuse me?
Before your book, we didn't know.
Wilsey didn't exist. Nobody knew who he was.
My grandchildren, my great grandchildren are going to know about Wilsey.
Well, great, wonderful. He should live forever.
Well, because they wrote it down, but because of you that found the manuscript that put it out there for us all to learn about Wilsey.
There would never be the Martha Bryan School in St. Charles County. She was the teacher. She never married. She was a teacher, and they named a school after her in St. Charles County. She was the one that was lost in the woods, and Wilsey found her.
How about that?
Yeah. I mean, how many children have gone on, never would have gotten the education that they got if it wasn't for Wilsey saving her life.
So we've been on here almost 2 hours, and I know you don't want to give all the stories about the book, or nobody buy the book, right? You invested tens of thousands of your personal income into this, and that's nobody's business. But I wanted to make sure I brought that up because every time someone buys this book, they can recuperate that, and what you've done is help to recuperate that. Well, what you've done is you put these stories out there, and so many of us, I hear people joke all the time. Everybody and their mom's related to Daniel Boone.
Probably.
You need this book. You really need this book.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Help out my man. That his great grandfather wrote this book to recuperate the losses there, so we can preserve these stories forever. Absolutely. So,
one more quick story about books. This is one of the most popular books that my great grandfather wrote. Pioneer Families of Missouri.
I need one of those.
And back in his day, this is impossible to find. This is
I know.
handed down by my great grandfather.
Books are gold.
The story about this book is that when you wrote a book back in his day, you only had a patent, or it was only registered for 10 years. So he sold out all of his books, and then his printing company went bankrupt. And an outfit in Columbia, Missouri, Lucas, printed his book. And they never paid him a dime because they didn't have to, because it was out of the 10 years. Poor William S. Bryan had to buy these books. He had to reach in his pocket and buy his own book to give them to the family. Yeah.
How about that?
And William S. Bryan says that the Bryans have this wonderful thing in their genes where they can make money in their lifetime, and then they manage to lose it all by the end of their lives. That process is repeated constantly through these generations.
Who cares? Because of the legacy that they have here. Here we are talking. When did William S. Bryan pass away?
1940.
So 1940.
He lived to be 96 years old.
God bless him. You know what I'm saying? So here we are in 2021 talking about William S. Bryan, your great grandfather that did this.
Yes.
Think about that. Let's think about that 1 second. William S. Bryan that died in 1940. He died before World War II.
Right.
Before people knew who Hitler was.
He knew, and he actually supported Hitler. He was a Democrat.
Let's move on.
He was a Democrat. And a lot of people don't. Here's history. Ford, the Ford Motor Company, Charles Lindbergh, the famous pilot. Many people believed Hitler was doing wonderful things, and supported him. Joe Kennedy even told the Prime Minister of England that he should just go ahead and surrender to Germany because Hitler just knew how to run things better. These are the, and of course, Hitler turned out to be just an absolute terrible, terrible person. But this is history, So he actually supported the idea of Hitler. Before he died, he definitely changed his mind. But these are things that it didn't matter if he was a Democrat, but he did believe in that.
Look at what Blaine said. He will be asking Santa.
Oh, okay.
Christmas.
There you go, Blaine. Yeah, I hope your wife is watching so she knows, so Santa can tell her what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, Blaine's on our team here at Family Tree Nuts. He's the fellow that writes our blogs, if you've seen him.
Oh, does he?
Yeah. History Boy says, howdy, y'all. History Boy's on his own YouTube channel. You want to check that out for sure.
Okay.
Kind of thing. And let's see. Sandy Schwartz, she put up here a wiki tree about the Bryans.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to put
Tracy says he's going to ask his wife for the book as well. LOL.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, Santa Claus is going. It's time to order because if you want to do it, now it's time to do it. It takes a while to ship it.
Yeah, it takes about, it'll take me a week to a week and a half to get it in your hands if you do it through eBay. If you like ebooks, you could order one and have one in 15 minutes from Amazon.com. Uh, if you put your order in with Amazon, I do appreciate it, because the more orders they get, the more inclined they are to keep it on inventory.
Please, yeah, that's a big deal, because this book, everybody should have it. If you love history, you should have this book, because this is not a book about historical boring facts. This is a book about people and their stories that real people lived, and the stories that they tell. I love you say that. The stories they tell around the Thanksgiving table.
Yes.
Sue, she's on our team here at Family Tree Nuts. She says she works with a doctor who's a descendant of Daniel Boone. He'll be getting your book as a Christmas gift.
Oh, thank you, Sue.
Yeah, I'll be sure to be buying.
And Tracy says she's going to come to Petwater and get it. You see where Tracy Clevenger? I hope I didn't butcher your last name, Tracy.
Yeah, he's going to come and help you.
Up to Petwater and get it.
Yeah, yeah. She said,
yeah,
thank you for your 4 years. I mean, so yeah, please share this video. Please share this video with the people you know. I know it's a long video. I know this is long, but please share it with your people, and let them know that this exists, because this is real history. This isn't just stuff. So look at there. There's another comment.
Kendra had a question about Kendra Pickens Mooney. Are there copies at the Boone Home Gift Shop? Yes, ma'am, there are. I forgot to mention that. The people at the Boone Home were gracious enough to order several cases of my book, and they do have it in inventory. If they don't, let me know, and I will be sure to ship them several cases more, and they'll be more than happy to pay me for them. So yes, go out to the Boone Home and enjoy it. Look around. One of the homes there that is the main office that they use to do all their operations is the Callaway Jemima Boone Callaway and Flanders Callaway home. They moved it from over in Marthasville and set it up just below the Nathan Boone home. And it's a perfect representation of what homes were like in the turn of the century.
There's a whole park there. There's a whole, U-shaped with multiple buildings that are there. It's, you can spend a whole day there.
Yes, you can. They've done quite a good job of preserving homes. There's even a fort they moved, which was the oldest structure west of the Mississippi. Unfortunately, nobody knows where it is, but it's on the 1,100 acres there at the Boone home. I'm sure if one asked, they could find the structure and go look at it, but it's a fort that they moved from St. Charles out to Defiance and reconstructed on the property.
Yeah, there's a whole lot there. I mean, it's we stopped in there to do the video that we did there on Daniel home there, but there you could spend. Well, hell, I mean, shoot, you could spend. People like you and I, we could spend all week there.
Oh yeah. Well, just down the road in Marthasville, right there at the gravesite, is the Boone Memorial Village, and they have a bed and breakfast there that you can stay in the David Bryan home, and they have a couple of period log homes that were moved there that you can stay in. And
tell us who is David Bryan?
David Bryan was Elijah Bryan's brother.
Okay,
and
your great uncle.
Right, my great uncle. And he is the one that had the property that the cemetery is on. He created the cemetery that Rebecca and Daniel are buried in, or were buried in, and all the other Bryans. And that graveyard there. So it's on the property, and there's a building next to it that's period. It's the David Bryan home. It's Daniel and Rebecca stayed there quite often. They loved the house. And David Bryan was gracious enough to give them the land to bury them in.
You know what I loved about that place is I visited there. Holy smokes, clear back in 1998, the first time. Yeah, and I really felt that I was in the middle of nowhere at the time that I was there. I really felt. Now I was there just about 10, 11 months ago, and I didn't feel like I was in the middle of nowhere anymore. But it's still very rural, and I think that's the way that Daniel liked it.
Well, the property that Daniel Boone had and settled, pretty much half of it was washed away by the river. The river meanders so much there that people lost their properties and their farms and went down the river.
Yeah. So, Mr. Broderick, we could talk.
That was my dad's name. My name's Bryan.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Broderick was my dad.
I know, but come on now, I mean, my dad's a pastor, and I spent all them years in the Marine Corps. It's hard for me to break old habits, but
I sure do I break your rhythm, don't I?
Yeah, you mess me up. You're like, hey, don't call me that.
Every chance I get.
We could talk all day long about the.
I'm having a ball. I don't know about you, but I'm having a great time.
And I think we should. I think we should have you back, and we should talk about stories that are in your book.
I love it.
We should talk about the Boones in general and the Bryans, your own ancestors and such, because there's a lot of people out there that are jealous of having that. So let's see, we got a few more comments. Okay. I think she's talking about some other stories that were other comments that are in here. You have to check that out. Jordan, thanks for the hate program.
James.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So
for me, I thought his last name was Parakeet. I had to reread it.
I know. James has made many comments on our videos. We really appreciate his support for sure. But so tell us. I'm going to tell a story one more time, and we're going to get out of here. I know you need to get to bed because I don't have anything to do, but I live in this world.
I'm pumped. I'll be up for hours yet.
Daniel Boone and his neighbors. This manuscript was written on paper by your great-grandfather.
Correct.
That was stories that he heard from his father, your great-great-grandfather, that lived with the Boones.
Yes.
So this is secondhand stories, and this is not stories about he lived here, he did this, and he did that, and then this year he did this. This is real stories.
Fun stories.
Fun stories.
Yeah. And there's factual stuff in there. And there's some mistakes. I mean, it was written in the 1860s. So you didn't have Google. You didn't have libraries where you could confirm a lot of these things. So there are errors, but
and speaking of errors, you also said that it is not modern day politically correct.
No, it is not. I'm going to forewarn you right now. It's the language that was used in the 1850s and 1860s. It's not in there a lot. There's nothing pornographic in it at all. But it's the language and the terminology they used to describe African Americans.
Yeah,
and it's there. It's in rap songs too. But let's face it, it's history. Let's learn from it. Let's not destroy it. Let's learn from it so we don't make the same mistakes again.
Amen, brother. Amen. Absolutely. So what, in closing here, what do you want people to know about your book? Why did you do this? Tell me about, let's get a little personal here. Why did you spend your hard-earned money? Why did you and your wife, Barbara, spent 4 years transcribing this? Why did you do this? What is this book? What does it mean to you?
First of all, I think I would have done it no matter what, just to get it in the hands of my children so they know where they come from.
Love it. I love that.
But mainly, it's important that people don't forget these folks. I mean, there's people that are named in this book that they never married, never had families, they died, they're dead, they're gone. Well, one sentence or two brings them back to life and keeps them alive for centuries.
Amen.
And it's important that we know who these people are and what they did and how they improved our lives greatly. If it hadn't been for them, we wouldn't be where we are today. And they suffered greatly to give this to us. So we should pay them homage and put their names down so that future generations can read and learn who and what these people did.
Did you get any personal satisfaction from doing this?
Oh, every time a kid asks me. Every time a young boy or girl comes up and wants to know about Daniel Boone. That's the greatest gift. Anytime I can share history with a child and then they can take it forward. I can't think of anything more rewarding.
That's no joke. That's real stuff right here. That's real stuff right here.
Yeah. And they should have it. And, there's not a lot of them that are interested, but the one or two that are, maybe you'll make a difference.
Look what Annette says there. I saw in a dream that all my ancestors were sitting in a room together, and when each member is put in place, then their story can be told and life matters.
Yes. I need to copy that. Yeah. That's wonderful. That's very well put. Thank you.
Sue says, thank you, Bryan. She calls you Bryan. I call you Mr. Broderick, but she goes,
Bryan. Yeah.
For your time.
The only time they call me Mr. Broderick is in court.
It's hard, but
we'll break you in that
habit. Look at her. She said, thank you for your wealth of historical knowledge and bringing dry bones to life. I could listen and talk for hours.
Great. And, we're having a ball. I mean, I could keep this up all night. I think Russ could too. We're enjoying each other. We're enjoying history. We're having a good time. I'm having a great time. And I hope you are too. And I hope all the folks watching. But I think we beat this horse to death, don't you?
Yeah, I think we better just take it off for now. But I would love to have you back on again here in the near future.
Oh, I would absolutely do backflips. You'd see a 70-year-old fat man doing backflips. That would be quite something to put on your show.
And you're a big Ohio State fan, right?
Who?
You're a big Ohio State fan?
Never heard of him.
So how do they find
somewhere on the map?
Huh?
I don't know, somewhere on the map. Did you point it out?
Oh no! I saw something on there. Look at this.
Who?
Let me see if I can get that on there. Oh man! Come on, Sue.
I win.
Yeah, you do.
Thank you, Sue.
There you go. And this says, I get really happy when it had no birth or record dates after my research, and I can see both in the death date and the Yeah, absolutely. In that.
Yeah.
And oh, look at that debauchery right there.
Oh,
gotta get that off there. Get off there, Tracy. Yeah, Sue said LOL. Or no, Blaine said LOL.
Yeah.
I try not to talk so much, but how do they find your book?
They find it on Amazon. You can get it at the Amazon bookstore. And I know they say that it's out of inventory or out of stock at the moment, but the more orders they get, the more they'll put in stock. And once they get to a certain point where they sell enough of them, they will keep them on inventory. We just got to get the word out. And any way you folks can help, I really would appreciate. If you want a signed, personalized copy, you can go either to my website, danielbooneandneighbors.com, or you can go to eBay and just search for Daniel Boone and his neighbors on eBay, and it'll pop up. And if you buy it on eBay, I will autograph it, and you tell me how you would like it personalized, and I will personalize it for you. There we go. There's my phone number, my email, all sorts of stuff.
And if you're hungry, go to 1400 West Adams, Penwater, Michigan.
If you're hungry, by God, we'll feed you a bean.
Amen. Just like your ancestor the great Daniel Boone would have done.
Yeah, we won't give you any lashings.
Amen, brother.
Well, I mean, Russ might like it. He'll wear leather when we do it, but
I know that, brother.
being from Ohio, you know.
Don't tell people that. I'm a Kentuckian. You know, so,
They don't know about that. They don't know about that other YouTube channel, huh?
No, there's no other YouTube channel. Hey, go Bucks, you know, kind of thing. Hey, I just spent all weekend at the University of Louisville, which
I'm sorry to hear that.
My son was being recruited there, so he may end up
Really?
there.
I thought you were just up in Wisconsin.
We were in Wisconsin last week. We're going to the Ohio State University here in a couple weeks, but I don't know where he's going to end up. But if you're watching this show a few years from now, Daniel Boone is just as relevant then as it is today.
And he will be 100 years, 1,000 years from now.
He really will be. So we appreciate you watching this. This book will be out there. You'll be able to find it and stuff. You've got to hear from the author. And Mr. Broderick, I would love to have you back on here. We can talk about stories about Daniel Boone.
It's an honor to talk to you. And Veterans Day is coming up, and we thank you for your service and all those other servicemen that are out there. Thank you for what you've done, and enjoy your Veterans Day.
You yourself. And speaking of that,
my brother was a veteran. I'm not a veteran.
Okay. Well, myself and Jameson Cable from the Kentucky History Podcast have a big surprise for you on Veterans Day. So be on the lookout for that. That's in the works right now. We have big. You know, we do our show on Thursday nights. Thursday is Veterans Day, so be on the lookout for something really cool for that. But
excellent.
Yeah, man, big surprises there. But anything else you'd like to say before we head out, Mr. Broderick?
Just thanks all you folks. It's really done my heart good seeing all the comments and hearing from cousins. Look at all the cousins that sent in little messages today. Thank you so much. And enjoy the book.
Absolutely. And make sure you get that book for sure. So we'll look forward to having you back out here, Mr. Broderick. And
Bryan.
Bryan, part of the Bryan family.
It didn't even hurt saying it, did it? It wasn't painful at all.
It's hard, kind of thing. I respect you, kind of thing. So, but make sure you grab this book here.
You're my friend. You call me Bryan, Russ.
Yes, sir. Bryan.
Sir. That was my dad's name, too.
It's hard. But we'll sign off for now. Hey, guys, make sure you grab the book here. We'll have Mr. Bryan Broderick on here soon again. And, hey, remember, family tree nuts, let our nuts find the nuts in your family tree.